They say the echoes carried across valleys. Summer 1462. You're an Ottoman soldier, part of the most feared fighting force on the planet. You've helped bring down Constantinople. You've stood beneath the banners of victory as empires folded before you. Now you're marching toward a tiny territory called Wallachia to punish a small-time prince who dared to defy the Sultan. It should be effortless. A week's work, maybe less. And then the smell hits you. Rot, burning flesh, something so foul your eyes water. Your commander signals the line to slow, scouts halt at the ridge, and when your unit crests the hill overlooking the Wallachian capital, you understand why. A forest, but not of trees. An entire landscape filled with human beings lifted on stakes, thousands upon thousands of bodies rising into the sky on sharpened poles. Some are freshly dead. Some are half bloated under the summer heat. And some are still alive, twitching, moaning, begging to die. Even the Sultan, the man who shattered the Byzantine Empire, stares in stunned silence. Then he does something unthinkable. He orders the entire army to turn back. What kind of mind creates a vision like this? What kind of person builds a monument out of agony? Here's the part nobody expects. It wasn't insanity. It was military strategy, cold, methodical, and brutally effective. Everything you've heard about the Impaler barely scratches the surface. Because the truth isn't softer than the legend, it's sharper. This is the story of how one man weaponized human suffering so completely that he halted the advance of an empire. And to understand how he became this person, you have to begin decades earlier with a child. Is 11 years old. His father, II, needs to secure his throne in Wallachia. To keep Ottoman forces from removing him, he offers tribute and something far more valuable, his two youngest sons, living hostages. And his brother are dragged from their home and delivered into the heart of the Ottoman world. They are not chained. They are not starved. Instead, they are dressed well, fed well, and taught the language and customs of their captors. But this wasn't generosity. It was calculated psychological pressure. Young grew up surrounded by public executions, slow stranglings, dismemberments, mass punishments designed to terrify entire populations into submission. Ottoman rule wasn't subtle, it was built on spectacle. Blended in. Resisted. He was beaten for disobedience, punished for pride, and every cruelty he witnessed etched itself deeper into his memory. He couldn't fight his captors, so he studied them. How they controlled people. How they used fear. How terror, applied correctly, lasted longer than any sword. 6 years later, when he finally returned home, he found his father murdered and his older brother buried alive by the same noble families who once pretended loyalty. Isolation, betrayal, humiliation. Everything he'd absorbed as a child hardened inside him. He began shaping himself into something new, something built to survive in a world of predators. By 1456, after years of waiting, and took the Wallachian throne. And he immediately demonstrated what his rule would look like. He invited the boyars, the noble families who had shifted allegiances for decades, to a grand feast. They arrived expecting celebration, instead questioned them. How many princes have you lived through? Some boasted of 7. Others bragged of a dozen. They were proud they had outlasted rulers. Smiled politely, and then he had them seized. The elderly nobles, those responsible for decades of treachery, were impaled outside the palace. The younger ones, along with their families, were marched to a ruined fortress and ordered to rebuild it stone by stone until they died. He wasn't looking for justice. He was eliminating the entire political class that had destabilized his homeland. And then the Ottomans came knocking. An envoy arrived demanding tribute and insisting travel to Constantinople to reaffirm his loyalty. When the envoys refused to remove their turbans, a religious custom, asked why. The explanation was peaceful, respectful. and then ordered the turbans nailed to their skulls. He sent them back alive, not as diplomats, as warnings. The Sultan was done playing games. War was inevitable, but didn't wait. He struck first, crossing into Ottoman lands and slaughtering tens of thousands in a series of raids so brutal even his allies were shocked. Then came the inevitable response. I, conqueror of Constantinople, assembled one of the largest armies the region had ever seen. Tens of thousands of elite soldiers marched into Wallachia to erase him. Avoided open battle. He burned villages, poisoned wells, emptied entire regions. His forces attacked at night, dressed in Ottoman uniforms, whispering Turkish commands, sowing chaos and fear. And then the night attack. Attempted to assassinate in the dead of night, storming the Ottoman camp with 10,000 men disguised as Turks. Fire screams, confusion. The Janissaries barely managed to protect the Sultan. Even though failed to kill, the psychological blow was enormous. If a prince with a fraction of the manpower could infiltrate the heart of the Ottoman camp, what else was he capable of? They would soon find out. As the Ottomans approached, they discovered a masterpiece. The forest of the impaled. Miles of bodies, perfectly arranged. A macabre work of military art designed to collapse morale. Men vomited where they stood. Others fled into the night. And for the first time, the Sultan himself reconsidered whether Wallachia was worth the cost. Within days, he ordered the retreat. Outnumbered 3-1, had forced the most powerful empire on earth to turn back. But terror is a dangerous tool. Once you wield it, it never stops consuming. Used impalement on everyone, nobles, merchants, peasants. Replaced evidence. Paranoia replaced loyalty. Within months, he lost the throne. His brother, backed by Ottoman support, replaced him. Spent 12 years imprisoned by the same Christian king he believed would protect him. He would regain his throne briefly in 1476. And then he died in battle weeks later. His head was cut off, preserved in honey, and sent to the Sultan as a trophy. His body vanished. No grave has ever been definitively found. So who was he? To his people, a defender against impossible odds. To Europe, the original spark behind the Dracula legend. To historians, a ruler shaped by trauma into a weapon. The real horror was never the impalements themselves. It was the fact that they worked. Fear, pure, engineered, weaponized fear, stopped an empire. And that's the question history forces us to confront. If terror can be this effective, how many other unseen horrors have shaped the world we live in? If you want more stories that expose the dark mechanics behind historical power, subscribe. We dig into the things textbooks prefer to bury, because understanding these shadows is the only way to keep them from returning.